Welcome to the next episode of The Edge of Right. My name is Joe Graves. This is my partner, Matthew Thomas.
Yellow. Hey, everybody.
And our associate, Alexa Fisher.
Hello.
And today, we don't really have like a single topic we're going to talk about today, but we're just going to talk about general things around Vero Beach.
Cool.
Since this is where we're located, our main office is in Vero, although we do service the entire state. We have an office in Port St. Lucie as well. But we have cases in St. Petersburg, down in Port St. Lucie, down in Miami, here, Treasure Coast, even up in Melbourne, Brevard area.
All over.
Yeah. It's really interesting that let's just talk about that for about a little bit before we get into the Vero stuff, but how the practice of law has really changed. COVID was something that was really actually very good. Not good for people who got COVID, but good for how it transformed the legal profession. Just in my lifetime, I've been practicing since 1992. A lot of time was spent, we used to call it windshield time. It was basically wasted time getting to hearings, getting to depots, getting, to whatever you needed to do, mediations and so forth. And that continued on that way for a long period of time. Accessibility of legal research. When I came out of law school, I had a trial program as a student for Westlaw, but basically before Westlaw, every law office had a huge library and everything was looked up by books, digests, books, treatises, etc. And now, we have that all at the tip of our fingers, our computer, everything's online. We can research terms. Westlaw has an AI component where you used to be very specific in how you research terms and how the connectors to the words and how you term. Now you can just, ask it a question and it'll do the legal research. And, Westlaw Code Council actually puts together, like a little synopsis of all the relevant statutes and automatically Shepardizes it. In the past, even though you found the case, you get the case, you copy it, then you had to go to another book and make sure that that case had not been overruled or criticized by another court.
I have a question about that.
Yeah.
How long? Okay, so let's say there's a case ongoing and a decision comes out. How long would it take for your law library to get that decision in a book?
Yeah. So back in those days, what was really important was make sure that you had a subscription to Florida Law Weekly. And so every week, you would get a publication of cases that had just come out from the various districts, and you needed to read it because case law changed so quickly, and you didn't want to go to court and have a case just come out that's in your Florida Law Weekly. And now with Westlaw, I think it's almost instantaneous. Once the opinion is published, since everything's digital now, it's so much easier, right? For these services to get these cases online. But yeah, so, and we still get Florida Law Weekly and we still read it. And Matthew's really good about, kind of taking the lead on that. And when there's cases that, affect our area of practice, Matthew's real good about disseminating that to the rest of the office and making sure that we're always up to date. You got to make sure you're always up to date and understand changes in the law or nuances in the law. It's rare that, existing law is completely overturned, but there'll be like a little nuance or a little something that makes, what you need to prove or how you need to work up your case a little bit different. So yeah, and so COVID came along and then, because out of necessity, we really didn't hear about Zoom or anything like that before COVID. And then COVID happened and, people didn't want to meet. And so it started really like everybody recognizing, let's do this by Zoom. A deposition, for instance, you'd have to have your client come in or go to a court reporter's office or go somewhere and sit for a depo. Now it's all done via Zoom electronically.
I did one like 2 weeks ago like that in person.
Yeah. There's still some old school guys that want to see people in person. But and Matthew's really good at this, but with Zoom now and, the only objection I ever had to doing like a depo remotely was if I had documents to show or I wanted them to look at or authenticate. But now with Zoom, you can share documents and you know, it's just like you're there. So there's no difference. There's no reason other than someone just being stubborn, really, probably to do it in person. And then it's not only depositions, it's hearings. You know, the courts have jumped on board with hearings and mediations, basically everything except trial. But there's talk that may be coming at some point.
Let's talk of it.
Yeah. I don't know how that would really work, especially with the rules of not looking up things and not being influenced for anything in your surroundings and
Like
stuff
a
like that. That's the
jury.
danger.
What a
I'm
jury.
very against it, but there are certain,
It's going to happen.
you know, that
It's going to happen.
I think even like even if it's a slow drip, like it starts with your binary selection and your voir dire of jurors,
That's true.
potential
That could be
jurors,
a
and
big
like
thing.
that's like kind of like where it starts, and then it comes from that.
But the capital cost to the government, you know, housing, you know, these courts and all. I mean, I think, you know, as you go into the future and governments hopefully looking to be more efficient and the costs, you know, of running a courthouse and having a full open courthouse. And, you know, it's going to, I think that's, you know, who knows, in 20 years, you know, by the time you're finishing up your career, how it will be. I think there's dangers, but I think, you know, you do voir dire, you know, people sit at home, pick them, then
Yeah,
show up. That's a good thought.
and it's I've always thought like you go to a comedy show. So say you go see Dave Chappelle's new show or something like that, and they don't want you to know what the jokes are before or spread them, and so you put your phone in this like bag, like you're going into a skiff at the CIA or something like that, and they don't want you to have it, and you put it in the bag and they tape it up, and then they like hold it, and you can't even get into the bag until you get out. And yet we just like let jurors like just have their phones, but I don't know the answer because they go home, they have their computers. And so I just think that there's a lot of maybe juror kind of
Juror
abuse, maybe,
misconduct.
misconduct, kind of like stepping out of bounds of like what it's supposed to be because it's just so easy. And it's kind of like it just everyone takes everything out of context when they find it on their own, and it's always so interesting. Like if you read someone else's text or something, you're going to read it one way and then they're going to be like, no, it's another way. It's like that's how juror misconduct works because they see something on the docket. We're not allowed to give full context to everything for the jurors, and so then all of a sudden they might think that someone's being a little less than forthright with information, but it's like no, there's other stuff that you didn't see or didn't understand. So that's the thing with technology that I get nervous about.
Most of what you read now on social media and otherwise, it's biased reporting. So there's an angle on how they're reporting things. So if it's a case that's been in the news or a case that's been talked about online, I mean, that's it. The reason it's unfair is because people make opinions about cases, but cases have to be determined based on the evidence that's presented in court. And the court has strict evidentiary rules about what the jury can see and what the jury can hear about a particular case, because the law recognizes that, oh, well, that'd be interesting to know, but it may be so inflammatory that it's unfair, or the source of that information, often we call it hearsay or things like that, or may not be reliable. Like something you've heard from somebody else may or may not be reliable. That's why, hearsay generally is not allowed. Admission of someone is, but hearsay of just overhearing someone else say something. So
a party opponent. Yeah.
Yeah. So,
to answer Alexis's question, though, I think it's interesting because, like, I do remember going through like book, and I mean, when I'm talking for people that don't know, in like a library, these are like gigantic columns that stretch all the way to the top that you have to literally like drag. Or it was a thing, and then it would like crank. And then like this librarian would see you doing it wrong, and like you're gonna, they could collapse, you're gonna die. It's like it was crazy. And then you would and I would have this answer, and then I would and they'd be like, "Oh yeah, now you have to go check
another book,
the appendix book." And you go to the appendix book, and in the back there would be a folded piece of paper that would be stuck in the appendix book if it had maxed out. And that piece of paper would then have like the case that overruled the case that you found 2 hours ago.
That's
and
true.
you would go, okay. And
well,
you can't work
folded,
backwards.
It's an insert. They would update the book with like an update that would be in the back. That would
it was like folded in the back. It's
whose job was that to be like, you better not mess that up.
It was one guy. He went around, he came in your chimney at night and he would do it in the middle of the night at all the law libraries around the world. That's the only answer.
It was easier to get a clerking job, when I was in law school, because
they needed that.
The law office, like you had access to the law library. And I mean, when you were researching an issue, your desk would be full of books. You'd have this case, this case, and then you have to go through them and decide, which cases you wanted, which cases you needed to copy, then you have to Shepardize them. Then you have to, look at the appendix, and then the worst thing was when you're all done, you feel like then you got to copy them on a single page copier. You're sitting there holding the book, and sometimes the copy comes out right, sometimes it doesn't. You got to make 3 of them: one for the judge, one for you, one for opposing counsel. And now it's just basically your keyboard, and so it's totally changed.
I spent 2 years learning the Dewey Decimal System. I became
Me too. I was a library assistant.
I was a library assistant as well. Yeah. And, well, I remember as soon as I was done, I knew like, total nerd. And because I thought this was going to help me. Like, I'm going to have the code to find all information. Because that's where you went. You went to the library. There was no, so like, I was like, oh, you want information? Booyah. I actually know. I know the Morse code. Like I know Braille. I know how to get to the answer. And literally, I remember they told me this, and like this like librarian's like walking by, and I'm like, can you believe it? Like I know Dewey Decimal. And she goes, oh, this will be gone within less than a year. They're moving away from Dewey Decimal. And I go, what do you mean? She goes, no library will be using Dewey Decimal within 1 year. And I don't think they do. I don't think they use Dewey Decimal, even in the main libraries, nowhere. And so that was devastating. Yeah.
That was library assistant in high school.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah. No, it was tough. Yeah, you felt like you had knowledge that other people didn't.
Yeah, I was
how to find things, and
I was like a guy that gave tours at the like Egypt pyramid, and it's like, oh, you couldn't possibly understand where to go without me.
Big box, and you had to like go through the cards, and you'd find the or if you wanted something that was out of date, the microfiche. Remember the microfiche?
I do.
Yeah, and so you'd have like to find the microfiche, and then you go to this big machine, and you'd stick it in the machine, and then page by page by page.
Say Alexa comes in, she's like, I'm really looking for this, sci-fi. And I'd go, you're going to be here all day by yourself looking for this.
Do I look like a sci-fi girl?
So I would look it up for her, and then I'd be so proud, and I'd be like, follow me into the sci-fi section. And then we'd go, and then someone would have misplaced the book, and then Alexis would be like, well, you don't know what you're doing. And I'd go, well, it's supposed to be here. Yeah, and they go, well, it's not. And I'd go, well, they're just playing pranks on us. I don't know.
That's the thing I'm saying about like who's in charge of like making sure the slip goes back in that book. Like you could
also
be
the library assistant, because if you if you discovered it,
sometimes they're reliable and sometimes they're not. And then if they don't put the book back on the proper shelf,
what if you
in the proper order? That's
scary.
Impossible.
Like
and lawyers love the new law. The reason it's important is because there are lawyers that, they're not supposed to use gamesmanship and stuff like that. But I think that, lawyers, that they can get a one-up on you, sometimes they will. And the new law is how they do it, with like these little ticky-tack areas where it's like, oh, that's a carve-out. So if this happens, this happens. And they'll use that to try to set it up. So if you don't know about that new law, you can fall in it, because there can be kind of misinterpretations that are spread through that law because it's not.
Well, that's
what
you look for.
Out.
You're at a hearing, and
gotcha.
Some lawyers like, well, judge, based on this, and you're like, that's interesting because the fourth DCA just ruled last week that or something like that.
Yeah, and those are always interesting too, because you see those a lot in the appellate briefs, but those aren't binding until they're fully published, and accepted. And so it's like, what do you do when you have this law that's just come out, but it's not binding, but it's going to be. But that's always an interesting thing how judges handle that. But
I think they generally follow it. They don't.
I think they do too. I think they do too. I know the appellate courts seem to like it.
Yeah. So that's I'm really impressed that you learned the Dewey Decimal System.
I spent like a lot. I spent like a lot of time. It's actually
Wow.
it's a total waste of mine.
Yeah. So in high school, I was the IT. Well, it's not IT. It was the. I think it was all done through the library part of it. In like when a teacher wanted to show a film, you have to roll your cart with the projector, and then had to keep the loop, make sure the projector. Yeah, that was.
It was like it was a Rolodex.
Yeah, and you'd have to show it, and I can fix, and always it would like start fluttering, and you'd have to fix the loop and all that sort of stuff. Now teachers don't have to do all that stuff. It's very interesting. I mean, when there was a device that came out, it was called Elmo, that we started to use in our trial presentations, which basically allowed you to blow up. Like you used to have to go pay, if you wanted a document to publish to the jury, which means shows it to the jury, you'd have to take the document and blow it up on this big board. And then you'd be carrying like all these boards into trial. And now, with Elmo started it, and now like everything's digital, your documents can be shown once they're into evidence, can be shown on a screen. So totally changed. I mean, you used to walk into court, almost was like a battle of who has more boxes, and now lawyers walk in with their laptop or whatever, and it's a totally different
battle of the IT guys now.
Yeah, so we rely on the IT guys, to make sure that documents are organized and categorized, because you want to be able to pull it up and make sure that's published to the jury. And so that's made things very different and very interesting. The law was practiced for a certain way for a good number of years, and then the last 20, 30 years, and at least in my life, things have drastically changed.
Definitely.
So, well, that's it for this episode of The Edge of Right. I'm Joe Graves.
Matt Thomas.
Alexa.
And we'll see you next time.